Hello and welcome to episode 23 of Smooth Traffic. For the keen-eared listeners among you, you'll notice that I'm not Jonny Edge. I am in fact Rob King. Jonny has unfortunately had to pop to the little boys' room, so Ben and I have taken the opportunity just to get the intro recorded. So joining me today, Ben Pearce.
Hello.
Now we've got quite a lot on today. We're going to be covering the SsangYong Musso launch, which I attended within the last couple of weeks. John will be telling us all about the new Caterham 310R, which he's had for a weekend driving. And we've also got some views on autonomous vehicles and where we'll see the world of cars in the future.
Ooh.
Well, here at Smooth Traffic, it's no longer me that does car launches anymore, because Robert King went on the SsangYong Musso launch because he got to have a big breakfast. King, tell me all about it.
Well, the breakfast was really good, actually, John. Thanks for asking.
Extra slice of bacon?
Yes. Extra slice of bacon, extra everything, extra toast. Even got a Musso mug out of it.
Ooh, top result. Top result. How was the car?
More importantly, of course, the SsangYong Musso. Obviously, we discussed it very briefly last month after I'd had a little run around in it at the SMMT South Day. This was a slightly more extended period with the vehicle. There were 6 Mussos available on the day. There was one that was loaded with 1 ton's worth of gravel in the back to show off the 1 ton weight capacity.
Very Wicks.
Very Wicks indeed, Johnny. Very Wicks indeed. Obviously there were a couple of automatics, a couple of manuals. They had one with the sort of steel checker plate top across the back of the load bay, and also one with the rear cab on it as well. So first off, popped out in an automatic, similar to the one that I'd driven back at SMMT. This one was the checker plate top on the back, which looks really nice. I'm a big fan of the styling of the Musso. I think if you're looking for a pickup truck, it looks just as good, if not better than, the things that are offered by Nissan, Toyota. It's certainly up there in terms of styling, and the checker plate top just really caps it off.
It's like a nice hat.
It is like a nice hat, and I think one of the big things about having a pickup over here, to my mind, is that you don't want one without something covering the rear load bay, because it rains over here a lot.
Yeah,
exactly. We don't get the best of weather, so really, if you're carrying anything that isn't a pallet load of bricks or something, then there's no reason you couldn't just get that checker plate top on it and go nuts.
I presume you can take it off.
I don't know if you can remove it fully, actually, Ben.
Okay.
Obviously, it's hinged so that you can get underneath it.
Yeah.
Sort of right to the back. But I didn't think to check whether you can remove it fully. It would make sense if you could, but then I would imagine since it's an extra that you're having fitted to the car, it wouldn't be removable.
But isn't the idea with a pickup that you only put things in that you don't mind getting wet, like bricks, gravel, or, inbred relatives?
Well, there is that, Jonathan. But I would say the beauty of the Musso is that because it's such a reasonably priced pickup, if you're someone that just wants a pickup because occasionally you'll need to use a large load space, and more generally you're just happy with fitting 5 people in a car and having a bit of extra room in the boot, I would say that this is perfectly suited to that.
Okay. I had a couple of questions about the Musso, King.
Okay.
My first question was does it need to be kept in the fridge?
No, contrary to your opinions on what you described as the strawberry Musso last time, it is not similar to anything made by Danone or other yogurt making companies. No, it doesn't need to be stored in the fridge. Obviously, as with any vehicle, I'm sure there's an optimum storage temperature, but I don't know what that is. Probably somewhere above freezing and below boiling.
Good call. So I suppose my second question is maybe not relevant anymore. Then I was going to ask if it felt light and fluffy on the road.
It's funny you say that, because I would not describe it in that manner at all.
Okay.
However, I would say that ride comfort-wise, if you're on a big main road, nice smooth roads and everything, fantastic. Is as good as any car in terms of the ride comfort. When you get onto the smaller country roads, where you'd probably be inclined to go if you had one, I would say it does suffer a bit. You do feel quite a lot through the suspension. And I know that, obviously, I said in the last episode that at SMMT, they said that they'd set it up so that it felt like a car. And suspension-wise it does, but obviously that is slightly to its detriment, I would say, on the more rural roads that we have. I don't think it would struggle too much on fields and whatnot, but I think because our country roads are very firm surfaces but extremely uneven, whereas obviously with a field tend to be slightly smulchy, if that's a word, and they just adapt better to weight sort of rolling across them.
So would you say the SsangYong Musso was a good dessert then? Because you did seem to enjoy it after a large meal.
You don't have dessert after breakfast, Jonathan. Well, I don't anyway.
You have second breakfast.
True, you do have second breakfast. But no, I don't have dessert. I found it to be a very enjoyable car. The automatic's nice. There's a strange thing on the automatic. If you're driving an automatic, normally you've got that option to pop the stick over and then you can go sort of up and down. But rather than that, on this there's actually a small button on the right hand side of the gear stick, if you can call it that, and literally you flick it forwards for up and backwards for down, and it's a bit weird. Initially I thought it was a nice little novelty, but I'm not so sure now. If you were someone that wanted to be sort of controlling the gear changes of the engine a lot, I think it would get tiresome quite quickly.
Tedious.
Yeah, very much so.
King, did you manage to find out from SsangYong if you could buy the new Musso as a single item or whether you have to buy as a multi-pack of 4?
Do you know, John, again, I didn't ask that question.
I would have.
I tried to keep it straight and down the line. For instance, what I did ask was, why is there an HDMI port in your car?
This is a very valid question.
Exactly. How many cars do you know that have an HDMI port in them?
Especially when they've got such a tiny screen. And actually the dash seems to be kind of all in sort of facing the driver. It's very driver focused. I thought the tech in it looks quite smart, but it seems to be surrounded, or appears to be sort of cheap and plasticky from what I've seen in the photos. What did you feel of it? Yeah,
the interior is somewhat basic, I would say. Obviously, for the price, sort of ranging from just under 16 to just under 19 grand. You're not expecting sort of the wood panelling like John had in that Volvo the other day.
No, but then the touchscreen and the sort of climate control and things like that looks quite neat. But that's why it looks odd, because it's kind of, some of it looks stylish, surrounded by rubbish. It is, and it's funny. Obviously, you mentioned the touchscreen. Unlike the Tipo, the touchscreen fits perfectly in the SsangYong. Yeah, they've obviously done the dashboard and the whole console around the parts they fitted, rather than putting an aftermarket screen in which doesn't fit or whatever. Odd things are like, the buttons, to sort of operate the heated seats and stuff. They're all within a good reach of the driver. Basically, everything is faced towards the driver. Unfortunately, that includes the passenger heated seat knob, which is right next to the driver's knee. Oh. So if the passenger wants to adjust it themselves, it could get a bit friendly. So is this, instead of being a good Wix car, is it a good date night car? Potentially. If your passenger needs to reach over and touch you on the knee to adjust their heated seat,
Oh, good call.
It could be the blend that we've been waiting for.
Take them for a date to Wix.
Let's be honest, everyone dreams of having that 5-car garage. But more importantly, people would dream of having one car that could fill all of the options, surely. Because, we live in a world where people can't afford to have 5 cars. So if you can find one car that covers all of the options, obviously the Musso not going to be good in terms of navigating small Cornish villages like the Up. But date night car, reach across, touch of the knee, who knows where that leads. Wix car, big load space in the back, put all your bricks and whatnot in. I can't remember the other cars that we'd picked, but it's irrelevant. The Musso generally is a good vehicle. Still sticking with the console, there is strangely also a cigarette lighter, and I don't mean as in there's a 12-volt socket. There is a cigarette lighter that comes out of said socket, which is incredibly unusual these days, I think. Yeah. But I'm sure I heard somewhere once that Korea, which is where SsangYong are from, if you weren't aware, a huge percentage of the population are heavy smokers. So I can only presume that that's possibly why it's still in there.
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, so really good day. Drove the manual Musso as well, which it's a decent enough gearbox. But I think if you were going to buy one, you'd go for the automatic of the two. I heard the guy saying that the market split apparently at the moment on manuals to automatics in pickups is about 50-50. But specifically on the SsangYong brand, they reckon that they'll sell 70-30 in favour of the automatic. And having driven both, I would go along with that. Obviously, a lot of people who go in to buy one may not test both of them, but I think the automatic is the obvious choice of the two.
I would have thought that there'd be more automatics, really, because the Americans love their pickups and they typically always have automatic cars over there, don't they? So
I think the market split is based on UK sort of numbers. So
that makes more sense.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, in America, I imagine it would be difficult to find a manual.
Yeah, Americans don't do manuals in anything.
Stick shift.
No.
Yeah, they don't understand.
Yeah.
They just don't understand what it is.
So, all in all, fantastic vehicle. I would definitely recommend it. If somebody approached Smooth Traffic and said, would you recommend a pickup truck? I would push John out of the way before he could say Mitsubishi. And I would say, buy a SsangYong, because they're reasonably priced and they're very pleasant to drive. I can't imagine they give you much bother. They're well made and they're probably fairly cheap to maintain, I would imagine.
Rob King favours sweet treat named pickup truck. What a shocker.
Well, it's not actually named after a dessert, John, and I know this will come as a bit of a surprise to you, but apparently Musso is actually the Korean word for rhinoceros, and the little Musso logo on the back of the vehicle has a little rhino horn coming out of the M. So you can make your moose jokes all you want, John, but it is in fact a rhino.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'd really like to drive one. I'd like the opportunity to drive one and just see how it does stack up to the L200 and the Navara.
I mean, as I said last time with the Navara, it's, the Navara's a fantastic piece of kit. But personally, if I was going to buy a pickup truck, if I can spend £10,000 less, and get a pickup truck that still has a DAB radio, still has seats that are comfortable, still has doors and windows that all shut properly, why would I spend an extra 10 grand on a Nissan?
Yeah,
when I could just buy a Musso.
And I think the pickup sector is one of these few parts of the market now that is kind of not untouched, but less touched by sort of brand perception and snobbery, because they are workhorses essentially. So, if the SsangYong can prove itself as a reliable machine that does exactly what it should do and can do the jobs it needs to do, then I don't see why they shouldn't sell more than its rivals, because in every other sector we've got brand snobbery. But in the pickup truck sector I don't think we've got as much of that, especially with Mitsubishi being leaders. If there's nobody really likes Mitsubishis because they're Mitsubishis, not since the Evo disappeared anyway. So I think they could do well with this one. I hope they do well, because I always like to see more competition coming in. So yeah, it sounds like you had a good time with it.
It was a really good day. The whole thing was, obviously you've been on your exotic press launches to Barcelona and other far-flung places in Europe.
Bratislava. Well,
precisely. Whereas I went to Jack's Hill Cafe, which is a popular sort of biker roadside cafe, just 30-35 minutes north of Oxford. It was what you kind of see in a lot of American films. Sort of the old school diner that's in the middle of nowhere that serves a good solid breakfast. And just somewhere that it suited a line of pickups to be parked outside,
I've got visions of you walking in, King, and all of your lorry driver friends sat in the corner just waving at you. Hi, Rob. Thanks for letting us know we can pull in now, Rob. Thanks for all your hard work on the motorway. Let's be friends forever.
Well, there's no need to be like that, John. You just need to learn to make friends better, and then they could be your friends too. Also on the day, they had a couple of their other commercial vehicles there, SsangYong. Just to cover them very briefly, the SsangYong Corando.
It's not named after a dessert.
And also the SsangYong Rexton, which also wasn't named after a dessert, I'm afraid, John.
No.
Sorry to disappoint you again.
What's going on? Why don't you call it the cheesecake?
No, John, let's not call it the cheesecake.
Or the layered yoghurt.
Well, I mean, I think you're just overthinking this now, aren't you, really? Moving swiftly on, or back on topic. The Corando is one of their smaller crossover SUV type vehicles, and this particular one, the commercial one, basically they remove the rear seats, put in a flatbed from behind the front seats to the boot, and then black out the rear windows, and you've got yourself a little van. It's 4x4. The one that was there was a manual. I thought it was a better gearbox than the one that was in the Musso. It was a nice little tight gearbox. It's not a brand new vehicle, the Corando van. Decent sized load space. The price of it starts at just under 14, goes to just over 15 grand. So, you know, if you're a small business looking for a little 4x4 van that looks like a car, and therefore maybe you're carrying around a lot of tools in the boot, people probably aren't going to be as inclined to break into a car as they would a van, because they won't think there's loads of shit in there.
This is a very specific criteria for selling the Cavando. So if you live in the wilderness...
This is just the way that I've thought about it, alright? This is just the way that I've thought who would get that. You know, if you're a small business doing local deliveries of stuff...
In the wilderness...
Not in the wilderness.
Well, it's 4x4, so you wouldn't have that in the city, because you'd only want front-wheel drive, wouldn't you? Because it won't be as efficient.
Well, no, I'm not saying you'd be in a city. I'm saying if you live, for instance, if you live in North Devon, where you've got 5 minutes of town, 20 minutes of countryside.
Yeah.
5 minutes of town, 20 minutes of countryside. Perfect for that. Deliver whatever at a local farm.
Your tools.
No problem with the track, and then back out again. I don't know. I found it quite enjoyable. The manual gearbox was a highlight. The Rexton is basically a larger one again. Very much an SUV.
Has it got a big gaping hole in the back for loading?
Funnily enough, the Rexton does indeed. Again, same principle. Taking out the rear seats. The rear load space can fit a bicycle laying flat from corner to corner. It's big like a van, but it drives like a car. There's not much more I can say on it really. It is the most dated of the SsangYong commercial vehicles.
Can it take liquid loads as well as solids?
You can put whatever you want in the back of the Rexton, John. But I would recommend that you buy a Musso, because they're cheaper than the Rexton.
And sweeter.
Much, much sweeter. So, so that's SsangYong.
Well, while Rob King's been off driving a range of Korean commercial vehicles, I've been having a much better time because I've been test driving the new Caterham 310R. There's not many of them around in the world at the moment, so I was very, very lucky to get a test drive on it. But seeing as we spent so long with the 420R on our end-to-end trip from Land's End to John O'Groats, I figured I'd be in a pretty good position to comment on what the new 310R is like. For those of you who don't know, the 310R is basically an upgrade on the existing 270 model. So things have been changed under the bonnet, the engine, the mapping, that kind of stuff. It now produces around 150 brake horsepower. It still sort of weighs the same. It uses the 1.6 litre Ford Sigma engine, whereas our 420R had the 2-litre Duratec engine. It feels completely different, King. Completely different. You would be amazed. I wish you'd been there because it's so different to the 420R that we had, and not just in terms of that it's a little bit slower, because it doesn't feel that much slower, but the way you feel the weight in the car is completely different to what we had in the 420, because obviously we had the SV largest chassis in the 420 as well, but we had the standard chassis in the 310R. It feels so much lighter, much more agile, and it just feels like a pure expression of what a Caterham should be. It's got that focus back on the lightness rather than just the speed, which I think the 420 and probably the 620 have. Yet to drive the 620, but just watch this space, because I will find a way to get the keys to one.
So when you say it was completely different,
yeah,
I mean obviously in terms of styling etc. There's not a lot you can do with the vehicle.
No.
And I can't quite comprehend how much different the actual drive would be, because it is technically a step down from the 420 that we had, isn't it? With it being the 310.
Yep.
And would you say that it was in terms of the difference? Would you say it was a step down in terms of the driving experience?
Not at all. No, it's just different. It's just a different drive. I mean, if you want pure power, then go for a 420 or 620 by all means, because the speed in those things must be absolutely thrilling, especially in the 620. The 420 was ridiculously fast, so if the 620 is even faster, then you're going to have an absolute blast. But the 310 just feels more... I don't want to say everyday, because no Caterham is an everyday car. We found that out ourselves, haven't we? But
Too true.
It just feels more natural for the car to be that light. You know, the lighter engine, the smaller chassis. I think our 420R weighed about 37 kilos more than this one. So it is that little in terms of the weight. But in a car that only weighs 500 kilos roughly anyway, you just feel it a bit more. And it was amazing how different it was. For me, it was really, really important to have that largest chassis. Now, if I had to order one, I'd definitely be going SV, because I could barely get my feet in the pedal box in that. There was near enough no room for me, and I'm not a big bloke. I think I'm probably sort of average build, and it was a really tight fit. to the point where my arse got stuck halfway down the plastic seat when I was getting in a couple of times. But this one luckily had the removable steering wheel. Otherwise, it would have been really, really difficult for me to get my knees into the car. I had to take the wheel in and out every time I got in and out, because otherwise it would have been much more uncomfortable. But yeah, again, similar Caterham experience in terms of driving. Like, everyone wanted to talk about the car, wanted to approach you and find out what's going on, what's with the car, is it different, did you build it yourself, all these questions. And it's such a privilege to drive that car and be able to engage with people, just normal people in the street. Everyone from like young children to old ladies talk to me when I'm driving a Caterham, and it's just so much fun to be able to explain what it is. And even I stopped off in a pub for a game of pool and a sandwich on the way back, and spoke to them there as well. And it's just an absolute joy to drive a Caterham, to be honest. There's nothing like it. It's just so thrilling. And yeah, for me, I'd have the 310 over the 420 now if I was going to buy one. It's louder, it's lighter, it feels a little bit sharper than the 420 that we drove. It just feels more natural. It just feels a more natural drive. And if you've driven Caterhams, I think you'll understand what that means. But unless you've driven one, I think it's really, really difficult to accurately describe how different the 310 and the 420 are. So if anyone's, in doubts as to whether they should drive one, pop down and see the guys in Crawley. They're a great team. More than happy to help. Every time I go down there, I see loads of people talking about cars, coming in, looking at buying models and stuff like that. They've got a huge selection. There's a Caterham for everyone. I do believe that, unless you're 30 stone, in which case there's definitely not a Caterham for you. But otherwise, yeah, brilliant car. And the 310 is the one for me now.
Quite a statement, because obviously we had a great time in the 420, didn't we? And you loved that little car.
Oh,
you were slightly sorry to give it back, weren't you? So to say that you'd pick this instead is quite a statement indeed, John.
Yeah, it just feels right. The 1.6 instead of the 2 litre, a little bit lighter at the front, a little slightly more responsive, thinner tyres at the back as well. The 310 has thinner tyres. Our 420 had obviously big fat Avon tyres to deal with it. This one still had the Avons, but much smaller. It just feels right. It's so hard to explain, but it just feels right, the 310. And I think Caterham themselves say, like, if they were going to build one model for the rest of their lives, it would be that car. And I can definitely see why. Since they've introduced the 310, 270 sales have plummeted because everybody now wants the 310. It just is a general improvement on the 270, and it was developed with very skilled Caterham racing drivers. It was originally a racing project, and they took it to the circuits, let the guys who are obsessives about the brand drive it. They all said, wow, this is amazing. It kind of caught on, and then before they know it, they were making it for public consumption. And that's such a great way to develop a car, because these cars are meant to be enjoyed. So if they developed it using the method on the track, and how can we make our racing car better, and then this is produced from that, I think that's probably the purest way you can develop a Caterham as well. So in all aspects, it's just had the perfect birth, and it's just a phenomenal sports car. Just go and drive one. Stop listening to Smooth Traffic and go and drive one. But seriously, wait till this episode's over.
Yeah, don't stop listening, please.
No, keep listening.
So you guys have probably heard Tesla made an announcement on Wednesday saying that the new Tesla cars will all have upgraded Autopilot hardware, and this will allow for full self-driving capability. So let's jump ahead a little bit and say 15 years time, all cars, or a majority of cars that are sold, have Autopilot style capabilities, and these cars can pretty much drive themselves, or maybe even the point where you don't have any choice but to let the car drive, no steering wheel, as we've talked about before, something along those lines. Begs the question, how would you buy a car in that world? Because we've talked about things like the Caterham. You feel how you're so sort of in touch with the car and the road, and you pull it around the corners and things like that. But if you're being driven by the car and you're just literally sitting in there and being taken from your destination, or taken to your destination, sorry, do you bother with handling and speed and anything like that, or are you buying it purely on comfort? How do you perceive this happening?
Well, I think it will just be purely a comfort issue, because all of the software built into the autonomous vehicles will take away the ability to speed and take away the ability to travel a certain way around a corner. So handling, speed, all those things become irrelevant. We'll be heading for an age where efficiency and autonomy and comfort, obviously, are the only attributes any car will really need or have. And it's scary, really, because I'm just starting to get into the industry where my views on cars are paid for, and that is going to be my career.
You could almost see it being a bit like, almost like a furniture shop. You'll turn up to the car showroom and they'll say, "Oh, check out this comfortable, memory foam bench seat we've got in the back." And that'll be how.
Yeah, but they won't even have a car in the showroom.
No, it'll be a collection of seats.
Yeah, it will just it'll just be a load of computers, and we're seeing this already because I think a couple of brands have already launched showrooms in shopping centres for cars. I think Bentley might have been one. I think maybe one of the Korean manufacturers another, where you just go on the computer and spec your car and order it through the computer.
Yeah, and
there's no need for even salesmen really when you get to that point. So are salesmen going to be out of a job as well, because you're just going to go straight on the computer, go, well, I know this is the car I want because it's comfortable and it will drive itself.
Yeah. Perfect.
It's going to be harder for companies to even sell cars because, what's going to make them different to the rest?
The quality of the TV screen inside, maybe,
Yeah, potentially. I mean, are we going to see people like Samsung getting involved, or hopefully they don't blow up? Sony, are we going to see like a Bravia car with an Ultra HD DVD, super duper 4K Blu-ray?
This is where you trip over yourself, isn't it?
Video technology. Yeah, I don't know a thing about that, but I think we're going to see showrooms without cars. Showrooms will basically be one big computer. You go in, you pick everything you want, and that's about it, really. Have you seen the Rolls-Royce concept? I don't know if I've shown you that yet, but the Rolls-Royce concept is a car that's meant to be the Rolls-Royce in about 100 years' time, I think. And it's just basically 2 seats and a fish tank inside.
Yeah.
And it looks ridiculous. It looks absolutely awful, but that is what the future's going to be. It's going to be a lounge on wheels, really. I can see cars getting bigger as well to cater for a more relaxing environment, perhaps. And it'd be like sitting in a little mini nightclub booth.
Yeah. I mean, you'd get more cars on the road, wouldn't you, if you think about it? Because at the moment, we leave that sort of sensible distance between cars. But if a computer's controlling it, you don't only need an inch to pass each other, really, especially around the towns.
Potentially, yeah. I think something else that was covered the other day that I've just forgotten in this moment. King, take over.
I mean, I personally, I don't think that the point of view of manufacturers will change at all. I don't think that you'll see someone like Samsung or Sony or another tech manufacturer coming in and going, look, we've made a car. Because at the end of the day, regardless of whether a person drives it or it's autonomously driven, you still need someone to build the vehicle. And obviously by that point, there's going to be a much wider range of electric vehicles available. But assuming that there are still cars using the combustion engine, then you'll still have the same manufacturers churning out vehicles. Because, with the greatest respect, Samsung can make the greatest TV in the world, but what do they know about making combustion engines? So, I just think it wouldn't surprise me if one of those sort of companies went into partnership with an existing manufacturer to produce an autonomous vehicle of some kind. But I mean, particularly if you look at the last sort of 10 years or so, the major manufacturers haven't changed, really. You've got companies like Tesla coming in. There are a lot of companies out in China now that are sort of getting bigger and bigger. But generally, if you think about the top sort of 5 manufacturers in the world, they haven't really changed in the last 10 years. Most of them are now adopting electric vehicles of sorts. So I don't disagree that the buying experience will be different, because I think it will be different.
I see you actually buying it from your front room, because VR will have taken off probably a bit better by then, and you'll probably just stick on your headset and you'll be as if you're in your car.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly see that, Ben. But I think, although obviously John's saying about the fact that you just go into a shop, pick your options on the computer, and away you go, I still think that consumers will want to test what they're getting. And they won't necessarily be testing the car, but they will need to go somewhere where, as you said, Ben, they can go and sit on the seats, try out the different chairs that they can have in their car. And I think there will still be that difference of the sort of working class families won't be driving around in the Bentley Rolls-Royce equivalents. And similarly, the more well-off families probably won't be driving around in the Volkswagen Up sized equivalent. So I think you'll still see a varying range of car sizes, because I think a car will, regardless of what's going on in the world, a car will always be a statement of wealth for a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree.
So the more expensive ones are going to be bigger, they're going to be more luxurious.
Yeah.
The smaller ones, you're still going to have that range of vehicles. And yeah, you say that you can go and sort of spec up your Bentley in a shop now, but I think for the most part, anyone who does that has probably already done their research. They've been to a Bentley showroom or dealer or whatever. They've sat in the cars. They know what they want. We're talking about people that will already have done their research, and I think that's just, you'll still need that aspect of going somewhere to try things before you buy it. But I have no doubt that it will certainly change and head towards that. And people are getting lazier. Let's be fair. The way technology is taking us, people are getting lazier. You can sit at home, buy something on Amazon, and it can be with you within a couple of hours now. It's not like you have to go to the shop to get milk. You could get Amazon to deliver it. And I think 15 years time, would you even need to go out in a car? I still think people will own cars as as just another point of sort of showing off how well off they are, or how hard they've worked to get to a certain point. But it makes you wonder whether there will even be that many cars. I wonder if we'll actually see a decline in cars because of the fact that people won't go anywhere. People can have access to everything at home.
It's interesting you say that, because there is something else to consider here as well, and that is that young people now, kids who are in school now, are much less interested in cars than what we were when we were growing up, because cars don't automatically mean freedom and cool anymore. They are becoming, in a way, a bit like smartphones. And that's why I said, I can see people like Samsung and Sony getting involved, because if they're going to go all electric, which, things look like they will eventually, then these cars are basically going to become smartphones. The way they are put together is going to become a bit like a smartphone production line. Obviously, you need a lot more space for it, and obviously you need a much better and more efficient battery production line, which I think is why Tesla are building that super factory the size of Brazil in America. But I think with young people being more disinterested in cars, when King says, we could see a decline in cars, that is quite possible, but especially in urban environments, because why would cities are getting so expensive to live in? Why would somebody waste money on a car? Even if it's automated, it just doesn't make sense. And
especially if someone has a fleet of cars that you can almost rent from. So if Tesla has a fleet in your area and you just fire up your app and say, I want a car to take me to Tesco in 20 minutes time, and one just appears, and you pay a monthly subscription for that. If you're not buying a car because of its beauty and the handling and everything else, you just want a comfortable thing to take you from A to B, actually, do you even need to own a car at that point?
And you don't want to share your space with other people.
Yeah, precisely, with other people on a bus. Yeah. Because
Tesla you can already summon a Tesla, can't you, on your smartphone?
And I think people like Uber are working on that sort of tech as well, aren't they, where you can, basically hire a self-driving car.
But then this is the other thing, if you think about it from that aspect of it, if people don't own cars, all right, say that they don't want to pay for a subscription service to have a car turn up at their door when they order it, what happens to taxi drivers? Because if you think of, if you stop and think how many taxi drivers there are out there.
Yeah.
Obviously, with this Tesla announcement, they have said that, I know it's not quite the same, but if you're an Uber driver, apparently you won't be able to charge people to use your vehicle as an autonomous vehicle.
Right.
You'll still have to be in the car or something similar, as I understand it. But obviously, from a regular taxi driver perspective, if all cars are replaced by autonomous vehicles, which are all super smart, they know exactly where all the other cars are, then they're going to be much better at avoiding collisions, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, they'll probably give off some kind of warning that they're going to be turning off so that something doesn't try and pass it or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then it almost it completely negates the need for a taxi driver, really.
It's a dying profession.
Yeah, it does feel like it's on its way out, doesn't it, in this era?
Yeah, because if it's an autonomous car, then unfortunately, I imagine that companies would probably, rather than having a driver, you'd get a customer service person who would sit and talk to people. Because that is kind of a service that taxi drivers offer, if you think about it. A lot of taxi drivers are very engaging. If you want to strike up a conversation with them, majority are more than happy to do so.
Yeah.
But if someone has brought a car to you and they're not driving it, then there's almost no no need for them to be in it. And that's why I think it would almost be like a customer service representative for the taxi firm, which would probably not even be referred to as a taxi anymore.
Hospitality,
exactly.
Hospitality people can get involved.
That is exactly the word I was looking
for. How far away are we from a bar on wheels? If you're going out for a night out, an automated car that is, like a large van for you and 4 mates or something, with 2 guys making cocktails inside it. That's possible. And if you want to have a conversation in a car, the AI will probably be able to have a conversation with you in a few years' time. I've got an AI on my Skype that I can talk to, and it's kind of a prototype at the moment. But there's AIs you can already add on Skype and have conversations with, which is just bizarre. So I think, if you're getting in an automated car in 20 years' time, there's a good chance if you want someone to talk to, maybe Siri. Maybe Siri's going to be your car. Maybe she's going to be your driver. It's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, but yeah, taxi drivers, dying profession. A bit like the guys who were all needed to make horseshoes all the time back in the day. Yeah. Blacksmiths, were they called?
No.
And motoring journalists.
Yep.
Who's going to be a motoring journalist in 20, 30 years' time? There's going to be hardly any left. So in a way, I mean, this podcast is probably going to be one of the last of its kind. Because in 50 years' time, there's not going to be much to talk about, really.
I think it's an interesting topic, and we'll try and cover it a bit more in the next episode. A bit more about the psychology of what you do with yourself when driving, I suppose. But yeah, it's interesting. So tweet us your thoughts at Smooth Traffic, and let us know what you think.
Well, that's the end of another episode of Smooth Traffic. Thanks very much for listening. Once again, you'll notice that Jonny has disappeared. It turns out that he's got quite a chronic bout of needing to pop to the gents from time to time. So, never mind. Hope you've enjoyed listening. Hope we've come up with some thought-provoking discussions in our last segment. If you've got any views on it, do please tweet us at Smooth Traffic. You can tweet John directly at the Jonny Edge. Tweet myself at Robert King ESQ. Tweet Ben at the Face of Ben. And please do, if you're listening through iTunes, give us a little rating and a review if you've got just a couple of minutes spare. Ooh, and before I forget, please do check out the latest edition of Sorted magazine, the November-December edition, which is available from all good WH Smith stores and possibly other newsagents. £4.50, and you can read Johnny's words on the Caterham trip that we took from Land's End to John O'Groats, and also you can see a picture of the both of us resplendent in our victory at John O'Groats. So that's about it. Hopefully we'll catch you next time on Smooth Traffic, the smoothest automotive podcast out there.